Lay your head on my pillow, sweet babe. Hold your warm and tender body close to mine.
On the internet, it's always hard to say how much the world has changed, as opposed to the little part of the world that you interact with through the internet. Back when I was on Tumblr, I interacted with a very different scene within veganism. And this article I'm about to read you was one of the most controversial things I ever published. One of the most scandalous, if you want to make everything into a scandal, that I ever published on my old Tumblr blog, Vegan Mind Tricks. Title is Brain Damage Caused by Cannabis, Adult and Infant. No mystery. Vegans are generally people who have questioned and rejected the premise that yogurt was essential to their health, who have questioned many things that they were told by parents, teachers, doctors, and marketing agencies. Vegans are generally people who have been willing to question cultural assumptions of what the word healthy really means. Why would it be any harder for us to question the myths surrounding cannabis? It causes brain damage. There is proof. Marijuana is not an harmless herb. Neither is nicotine or cocaine. They're all natural plant leaves. That doesn't mean they're any more harmless than nightshade. On the contrary, all three have proven negative effects on the adult brain, and lamentably, on the unborn fetus as well. With time, data doesn't just accumulate. Methods improve. The explosion of MRI research in particular has presented us with evidence that's impossible to deny, and ever more nuanced information about the type of brain damage involved. It isn't just brain damage shared by consenting adults. It is also brain damage that pregnant mothers can inflict on the next generation. Back in 1989, we already had a sad warning that infant brain development was impaired by mothers smoking weed. Marijuana impacted infants don't cry in the same way that healthy babies do, and that fact can be scientifically demonstrated. Another important proxy indicating harm to the infant is reduced birth weight. Note that for a long time we didn't know about specific health damage caused by maternal cigarette smoking, but we did have evidence of reduced birth weight as an indication that something was wrong with smoking during pregnancy. In a separate study published at the same time, 1989, it was already clear that cannabis interrupts fetal development and causes lower birth weights. Now, if you guys are just listening to this and you're not paying attention to the text on screen, you might not notice that I provided throughout this article links that the reader could click on to get to peer-reviewed articles in real scientific journals. So when I say that something is obvious because it was proved in 1989, that's followed by a little word click with an underline. Those were links that the reader could click on to draw their own conclusions and consult the real scientific research for themselves. You've probably heard about fetal alcohol syndrome, FASD. Well, has anyone told you that the effects of smoking weed on the baby may be worse? Quote, women who use marijuana during pregnancy were 5 times more likely to deliver infants with features considered compatible with the fetal alcohol syndrome, close quote. This was already known in 1981, click for the source, but it remains much more taboo than the frank prohibition of expectant mothers drinking alcohol. In more recent years, the explosion of MRI evidence has made it very clear that cannabis does cause brain damage to adults who smoke it. Want to consult a few medical journals on the subject? Source 1, Source 2, Source 3, Source 4, Source 5, Source 6, I could go on. So all 6 of those are articles in peer-reviewed medical journals the reader could click on, see for themselves, etc. I'm not an expert. To know all of this, you don't need to be an expert. What you need to do is the same thing that all vegans already have done. Set aside convenient excuses for culturally familiar habits and question the underlying facts. This post is an indirect result of my happening to read a vegan blog by a pregnant mother who offered various excuses for smoking weed during her pregnancy. I was struck by how similar her excuses were to those offered for eating meat. Very often, meat eaters want to pretend that nutrition remains a very mysterious science. In fact, it has become much less mysterious in the last 50 years. The same is true of the effects of recreational drugs. They're real, they can be proven, and in the case of cannabis, they have been proven. The information is instantly available if you can read English. Is that information available if the only language you can read is Lao or Cambodian? No. It is worthwhile to reflect on just how easy it is for native English speakers to figure this stuff out, and reciprocally just how difficult it is for native speakers of innumerable other languages. If you can read this article in English, you don't have much of an excuse. And if you're vegan, you're probably already accustomed to rejecting excuses of exactly the kind that are offered to justify weed smoking.
À-bas-le-ciel.
But sadly, this was not the most controversial article I ever had on Tumblr. The most hatred I ever got was for a few very brief comments in passing that just said that I felt that playing video games was a waste of time. And these were not articles on the subject. These were not insults directed towards other people. But I made a couple of comments that I do not play video games as a grown man. And reflecting back on my own youth or whatever, I feel that it was a waste of my time when I was younger too. And in response to that, several people became diehard, devoted haters of my blog and tried to get my blog canceled and shut down, all this other nonsense. These were vegans. These are my fellow vegans, but who decided that because I was against video games, I should be kicked off of the website. I should be punished to the greatest extent possible because I dared to question their hobby, what they did with their spare time. Wasn't even pointing the finger at them. Pointing the finger at myself, saying I don't play video games. And when I did play video games when I was a kid, I look back on that now as having been a regrettable thing and a waste of time. So now, of course, it is laughable to me, and I do laugh that some people are trying to dig up articles from that blog, my old blog, to construe them as somehow scandalous or embarrassing to me. Not. There's nothing embarrassing or scandalous about the blog. You can take a look at it. If I had more time to kill, I could start it up again now. We could have the return of vegan mind tricks on Tumblr. As I said, at one time it was actually a really popular blog that really had a steady following of people who appreciated it tremendously and who wrote into me to let me know that and so on. I was as successful as I could possibly be within the digital vegan demimonde on Tumblr. But among the different ways to try to make it seem, and look, the only thing you need to do to refute the ridiculous characterizations of what's on that blog is look at it. You just click on the link below this video. You can scroll through and look at some of the articles on different topics. Several on, an attempt in Sri Lanka to try to make the slaughter of cows illegal. All kinds of different issues in veganism. I just wrote articles about. And I did have some debates with other vegans on there and so on. But I mean, the game specifically that Durian Rider has been playing and trying to defame me with this, it's just as laughable as what he did with my couchsurfing profile. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he tried to construe my couchsurfing profile as being tremendously scandalous and scintillating and sexy and embarrassing to me. And all I did in reply was get on camera and read what the profile actually says. That's still a hilarious video. It's just me sitting there laughing, saying, how can you think this is a scandal? How can you think this is something I'd be embarrassed about or I'd feel ashamed about? And I can say exactly the same thing now about this blog that I had in the past about veganism. How could anyone possibly think I would be ashamed of it or scandalized by it? And if you want to see the reality behind this totally phony scandal that he's invented, you can look at pretty much any article on the blog at random. You can read any of them that are about topics that might interest you, and you can draw your own conclusions about the type of guy who wrote that blog.
À-bas-le-ciel.
So you want to know what's funny? It's funny that now that I've lost weight and I've become vegan, our people be like, be careful now. Be careful about your protein. Make sure you're getting protein. But when I was fat as hell and about to bust, nobody said, be careful. You look like you about to have a heart attack or a stroke, nigga. Nobody said that. But once you start eating healthy, people want me to be careful about my protein. Ain't that amazing? I was about to die, have a heart attack or a stroke. Nobody said, be careful. You look like you're about to have a heart attack, nigga. But as soon as I start eating healthy and lose weight, be careful, nigga. You know you need protein. The hell out of here.